Well, thanks for the opportunity. I was thinking back in 2020, I did a similar presentation at this meeting, but we were all online that year. We were all winging it, but we were all online. I feel a little funny being out of the room and not being able to see everybody, but I appreciate the opportunity and glad that the timing worked out to do this today. And I miss being there with y'all today, but I enjoyed hearing Jeff's comments, and you're actually going to get a couple of repetitive slides there, but it won't take away from either of the presentations, I don't think at all. But once again, thanks for having me today. And I'll just dive in. I thought what we could do real quick is just take a quick look backwards and kind of really going way back at the history of the line for a second, and then talk a little bit about where we've been and where we're going over, say, a 10-year time period or so, something like that. But let me see if I can. Oh boy, let's see here. Why is this not advancing? I'm going to minimize this and see if that helps. There we go. Did that come through? Yeah. Okay. So as many in the audience may know, but perhaps not everyone, Texas Pacifico does. Oh, come on. What's happening here? Texas Pacifico belongs to the Grupo Mexico Transportes division of the larger parent company Grupo Mexico, and that's comprised of mining and transportation and a smattering of other activities that the company's involved in based in Mexico City. We belong to the transportation division and are one of five entities that comprise GMXT. And as you can see on the slide here, they cover on the Ferromex Ferrosur part of the portfolio. They cover 24 of the 32 Mexican states. The two states in the U.S. are, of course, Texas through us, and the Florida with the Florida East Coast running between Jacksonville and Miami. And so that really makes up the GMXT portfolio of railroads. I guess I'll need to update this slide at the end of next week or so. It'll be one of 7 Class 1 railroads in North America when the merger is fully finalized. And then, as you can see, there's a number of ports that are served principally through Mexico and Florida, really, and including the Mobile, Alabama, the partnership that Ferromex and G&W share on the rail ferry that goes between Coatzacoalcos and Mobile, Alabama, there across the Gulf Coast. And then you've got your ports over on the east coast of Florida as well. So that's a bit of an overview of the entire transportation portfolio. When we look more specifically to Texas Pacifico and look back at the origins and the history of it, the KCM&O, this was Arthur Stilwell's dream to find and create the shortest land route from the center of the country in Kansas City to a Pacific port, and that is the port of Topolobampo at Los Mochis. And so we operate, as was mentioned a minute ago, roughly 400 miles of that from San Angelo Junction, which is just outside of Coleman, Texas, to Presidio, to the border there at Presidio, and then across the sister city on the other side, Ojinaga, Chihuahua. So that's really kind of where the foundation of this historic line really came from. As you see, 1901, the first rail laid in Emporia, Kansas. Not Texas Pacifico, but rather the South Orient Rail Line has quite a storied past, as many and most railroads do. But the state became involved, in the early 90s, and it was about a 10-year period from its initial involvement of securing the line before it was to be effectively abandoned and scrapped. The state stepped in and purchased the line, and then effectively Texas Pacifico was created by Grupo Mexico. They added investment to the mix, and that's what started our existence and relationship with the state of Texas, effectively as tenants operating the South Orient Rail Line. Our connecting partners, and I'll get into the bridge in a minute. Jeff referenced it, as did Peter, but at the border on the southern end, we'll interchange with our parent company Ferromex, and then on the other end of the line at San Angelo Junction, we interchange with BNSF and with Fort Worth and Western, and we do daily interchanges with both of those. Fort Worth and Western, we do quite a bit of move traffic just between the two of us on certain lanes, and then they're also a bridge carrier between the UP or KCS and Texas Pacifico. Jeff popped this map up a second ago, but just to kind of show you, you're not hitting a lot of big cities on this 385-mile stretch of line in kind of the neon green, but you do see the San Angelo Junction interchange point just outside of Coleman. The pink line to the north and east is the Fort Worth and Western, of course, and then the BN line running between Temple and Sweetwater, as you can see it on the map here, is how this all comes together on our north and east end. We do have the 11 miles of trackage rights at Alpine going out to Paisano Pass, and then from there we drop down again on into Presidio. So that gives you a bit of a little better understanding of the line and the communities we serve. Kind of breaking it down, if you look east rather, of San Angelo in the Miles, Rowena, Ballinger areas, where really all of our grain shipments come from that area. Some fertilizers that predominantly kind of makes up what hits there. San Angelo is pretty diverse in what we bring in or originate out of there. And then as we move over towards Barnhart, Big Lake, Rankin, and Fort Stockton really are the more active sites going west from San Angelo. And as you might imagine, most of those really have to do with the oil and gas sector and the different products we carry, both for drilling and for completions, which you equate to fracking. And that most of that activity in that southern tier of the Permian Basin is what you see coming and going into those terminals. We operate yards in San Angelo. We have a small yard in Barnhart. We have some track space in Rankin, McCamey, and then the yard in Fort Stockton that we are in charge of operate. There are private terminals in Miles, Ballinger, Miles. There are several in Big Lake in and around Big Lake, and at Sulphur Junction. And so those are some of the other terminals that we service along the line. And then for the last 5 years or so, we've been most active between San Angelo Junction and Alpine. CSA is an aggregates company based in San Angelo, and they built a quarry that's rail served just outside of Alpine, up there kind of by Titley, as you see it on the map. And so we have regular service to them, albeit somewhat seasonal. We do have regular service in and out of that quarry out there near Alpine. So that's been the active area of the line for the last many years since that bridge burned. In the last 5, we've been going as far as Alpine since that quarry opened up down there. As I've kind of already touched on a little bit, I mean, from say the 2012 to the 2019 timeframe, certainly frac sand was the dominant play. When I came into this job in May of 2018, it was our highest single volume month in the history of Texas Pacifico. Not a great month to start when you're at the peak. And out of over 4,600 rail cars we moved in that 1 month, over 4,200 of them were sand. If you fast forward just several months into the year of 2020, for a little perspective, we moved less than 500 cars for the entire 12 months of 2020. So we really fell off a cliff when the northern white sand started getting replaced by regional sand. Many of you know that there was in about a 24-month period, about 24 sand mines in the Permian Basin came online. And then you had a little thing of COVID that came in shortly after that. And so it got pretty ugly. But as our little lineup here suggests, it's a lot about the energy sector. So the wind, I mean, well, wind components, blades, towers, crude oil, refined petroleum, and pipe are these are transmission line, your 36-inch, 42-inch diameter pipe. Um, those are a little bit more project based. Those don't seem to, they're not kind of that continual business. Sand was for a long time, and we still see some sand. It's come back in 22, stabilized for us, a little up from where we'd been the previous couple of years, and that's holding pretty steady right now through the first quarter of 23. Our ag products are fairly stable, although, in a year like 2022, I think we ended up shipping less than 50 rail cars of wheat out of the region just because of drought. This year, we're on track to probably ship somewhere in the order of 1,000 cars of wheat. So you can see some tremendous variability based on the climatic factor, certainly with ag, and it's somewhat limited, but it can still be significant for us in a good year like we hope 2023 will turn out to be. Let's see here. So just moving forward, I mentioned and in reference 2020 and 21, those were important years for us, but they were tough. It was kind of white knuckle, hang on. Certainly when oil went to negative $40 a barrel, what was left of sand and kind of anything else that was related to drilling activity and certainly completion work, fracking, came to just an absolute standstill. Pipe projects got either canceled or postponed, and we took it. It was pretty tough. That said, we still spent a whole lot of money in those 2 years, and all in anticipation of making sure that we were making steady progress to get the international rail bridge completed, and get the line back to where it was in serviceable condition, anticipating the reopening of that bridge. Just to give a little perspective, the bridge, as Jeff mentioned, was burned in 2008. It burned again in 2009. Legend has it it was burned a year to the day. The second fire was a year to the day after the first. I don't know a lot of the history about that or who supposes what happened exactly, but be that as it may, it took 11 years to get the permitting to rebuild the bridge. That happened in, oh gosh, it all kind of runs together, but late 18, early 19, I want to say. By I guess it was July or so of 19. Well, it took us about 9 months during 2019 to rebuild the bridge. The only thing that we didn't complete at that time was laying the rail on it, but the bridge, otherwise, the structure was completed in 2019. And then in 2020 and 21, you've certainly by now had time to kind of read through some of the other projects that we took on that year as far as Texas Pacifico is concerned. Continued relaying track, and then fully completed the bridge with the rail, as you see in the picture in the upper right screen. Ferromex spent about $15 million in that time frame to rehab and fix bridges and track, just due to deferred maintenance over a line between Chihuahua City and Ojinaga that also hadn't been used in over a dozen years. And so they spent about $15 million in that time frame to upgrade and rehab the track and bridges and have it working order. And then the other significant piece that happened in late 21 was really early in the year, funding from FHWA came through for the rail inspection facility for Customs and Border Protection that they'll ultimately operate. And then later in the year, going down kind of to the wire in the third special session, we got some state funding to match the federal highway dollars, and that completed the funding need for what will be built, starting sometime later this year, early next year, to really fully pull all of this, to closure and reestablish rail connectivity at that point. So Jeff didn't share this with y'all, but I did get the okay that I could pop this up here. And this is the timeline that we're all kind of working from right now in terms of what that profile looks like of getting the bridge, the inspection facility built. I think some of the key points and some of this, I don't know if it comes across big enough on your screen to see for the audience, but Jeff referenced the RFP that was issued, and they've gone, working their way through the procurement process for the NII or the X-ray equipment. And, I think we feel good about the trajectory that that's on. It's showing on this timeline an August contract award date for that equipment. I think it's possible that I think that's pretty. I think we're probably on track to do a little better than that, which is exciting. We'll see how that plays out here in the next couple of months. And then the other, big piece I would say that we have an eye on certainly is the item, the letting for the construction project showing to be here in September. And so that's looking maybe even a little more aggressive, might be in August, but an August-September timeline of getting that out. And then moving on into contracting for the construction of the facilities, and then installing the NI equipment and being having this thing done once and for all. So we feel like this timeline is there's the real potential for us to do a little better than what this is. This is kind of conservative, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And we're excited about that prospect of how this timing looks to get this completed. As we look beyond the bridge opening and getting cross-border traffic going, I think probably the most exciting part and the part that I take most comfort in knowing is that once we do that, it's going to really allow us to have a much more diverse product mix, and that'll help all of us sleep better at night, not being nearly as dependent on sand on its own and the energy sector more generally, just due to the cyclical nature that industry is always in. And it's when it's good, it's great, but when it's terrible, it really hurts. And so that not being, not having 94% of your market share being sand of your total product mix like we were in 2018 will be a much healthier place for us to be. And that cross-border traffic absolutely is going to allow us to diversify much more than we've really ever been able to. So we look forward, ag products, some of this could be going, ag products moving kind of really in both directions, northbound and southbound. Certainly refined petroleum products, that's going to be more of a southbound play, potentially LNG in that, also southbound. Minerals could be moving both directions, and I think would be in certain scenarios. Cement, if we had that bridge open right now, we could fill our full capacity with cement trying to get to the DFW Metroplex from Mexico producers. We could be doing that today. There's a tremendous demand in the DFW Metroplex, and it's just really frustrating knowing that all that pent-up demand is there and us not being able to service it. But that could be a big one. Some of the industrials, what we classify under our industrials, I think could be probably tend to be more northbound than south, but not exclusively. Metals, kind of both directions. Chemicals and fertilizers probably tend to be more northbound, but not exclusively. And I don't have these on here because I think these are the types of products that we reasonably stand to move from the initial get-go of really kicking off cross-border traffic flows over the City Okinaga Bridge. But clearly, the level of interest in automotive and/or container traffic is also quite tremendous. I mean that as we all know, the Southern California ports, are still not. People are trying to figure out how to not be as dependent, even as things have normalized. They're trying to figure out how to not be so dependent there. And so I think that does create some opportunity. But I think those are things that we'll have to grow into, and those are not going to be probably really front and center for us on day one or week one, or perhaps not even year one, but certainly something that I think the potential for us to grow into is very much at play as far as that goes. I think Peter made a quick reference to it, and I just wanted to share this. This is exciting uh, development going on in San Angelo. So if you notice in the lower left section of the picture, it says TXPF main yard here, and so you see where that line, the rail line, crosses the street out there, highway. That's 50th Street in San Angelo, on the far north end of San Angelo. Our main yard is kind of stops at that street effectively. So this new rail park development is immediately adjacent to our rail yard. You have to go through the rail yard to get to this site. 180 acre site. It's really a public-private partnership. This was initiated by the San Angelo Economic Development Corporation that resides, in city government in San Angelo, and the Chamber of Commerce Economic Development Department came together and really kind of hatched the idea about this to try to make this become, a reality. And then over the last few years has partnered with South Plains and Lamesa. Shad Weisner, some of you may know, he operates a facility that his family owns and started and owns in Slayton, just off the BN line south of Lubbock. And then they operate another facility in Pueblo, Colorado. So this would be the third one that's under their ownership and direction. I don't know that they're all three owned by SPLRR, but there is a public-private component to this, and Shad it's his to really to make a success out of, and I think he will be successful. Here's listed there some of the developments that have happened really over the last year or so, and they've made some real headway. I just got word this morning we got another shipper coming into there. We're going to start delivering some cars next week into there. So it's exciting to kind of watch this trickle. I think he's got a few big things that are out there, and it's, you kind of think of the shopping mall model, although we might not want to follow that these days, but the idea of having an anchor tenant or two or three will really get the ball rolling. And I think some of those are in the hopper, and one of them is going to catch at some point. So the rail park, people ask me around town all the time, is that really necessary, and why did we do that, and is it going to be successful? Does it have a chance? And questions along those lines. And my response is always, it's really twofold to me for why this makes a sense, and it makes sense now, and why I do think it will be successful. One is transload capacity in San Angelo is very limited, and outside of a few private industries that will handle their own products in town, kind of in the immediate area of San Angelo, our yard is really the only other location for transloading products. We don't have room in our yard for any kind of fixed infrastructure to be added, whether that's liquid storage tanks or overhead storage, covered areas, or anything like that. That's out of play for us. We don't have the room for it. And effectively, the only thing that we can allow for is if you're loading or offloading, it's coming off of a truck or going onto a truck, and that truck's headed right out the gate. I mean, there's very limited storage capacity, anything like that, just laying stuff on the ground. So from from a community and economic development perspective, having more opportunities to offer rail to existing companies in San Angelo that would like to get into rail on maybe a smaller basis that really can't afford or just flat don't, where their position don't have the ability to bring rail to their facility, is a real opportunity. And certainly, I know this as I have a very close working relationship with the Chamber of Commerce Economic Development Group, and more and more there are people that they're talking to that where having rail service is a box that they have to be able to check for San Angelo to even be considered for certain projects. So I think in that way, attracting new businesses, but then also serving the existing community in a way that we just can't at the Texas Pacifico yard, is where there's, one part of two that make a lot of sense for this yard. The second one is the fact that that bridge is going to be opening imminently. And this one I struggle with a little bit more. We talk a lot about it, or what does it look like? What's it really going to serve? How is it going to make a difference? And I've got some thoughts and ideas on it, but I don't really know. But I think the fact that this is still a bit of a blank slate, as you can see by that picture there, there's still a lot of opportunity for developing this site out. And I think those things and the clarity on that will come to us, once that traffic does start flowing, and it is a reality, and it's not one more year going by where Texas Pacifico says, yes, we promise the bridge is coming. I mean, once it's really here, I think this will come into much more clear focus about how this particular facility has an opportunity to play in that whole new cross-border world that we'll find ourselves in. So I think in that regard, look, we're in San Angelo. We do not experience the same type of explosive growth that you see in the DFW Metroplex and Austin, San Antonio, for that matter, really anywhere 281 or 35 corridor and east. We kind of like it that way in some regards, but in terms of growth and development, this is not a light switch where you turn it on. It really is a build it and they will come type scenario. And I have a lot of confidence that this place will be very successful in the coming years. So that's another, interesting development to be somewhat involved in and watch and help grow, because what's good for them is going to be good for us and vice versa. And we have a real clear understanding about that with Shad and his team, that we're very much in this together, and success will be for both of us to enjoy. And that really concludes my remarks. I'm happy, if the time allows and we can figure out how to make it work with the remote connectivity, happy to take some questions. Any questions about more specific timing to the bridge developments, you can ask Jeff in the room there. I'll defer those right up front. But I'm happy to entertain other questions if there are any.
All right. Thank you, Stan. I know we see your email address up there. I would say if anyone has a specific question for you, send it to s.meador@txpf.us. And it's so good to hear about these upcoming developments. You have a little gem there in Southwest Texas still being polished.
Yeah.
And when you do get that bridge open, I'm sure we're going to see some great things happen down there too.
Well, thanks, Peter, and we do appreciate the support. TRA, you guys have been great about getting the word out and keeping us somewhat in the news and the developments, and that's not going unnoticed, and we really appreciate the partnership and that recognition.
Thank you. I'll just wait for my invite there to see the first train coming over the Rio Grande.
All right.
Thanks again.
Okay.
All right.